What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today. A post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Rams come away with the win 27-9. It was a disaster of a game for the Vikings. Obviously, the Rams win. They win outright. And we see the under hit. Surprise, surprise. As we had seen that trend for the entirety of Wild Card Weekend. It was a complete disaster from the Vikings side of things. So, the Rams next week will now go on the road to take on the Eagles. That line has already come out. We are not waiting on that. It is minus 6.5. The Eagles that are at home. It is a 45.5 over under. There are no player props posted yet. Last night when I was here 24 hours ago, we were talking about the rest of the games, which we will certainly go through because we now have seen player props posted for Lions at home. They are minus 8.5 point favorites taking on the Commanders. A massive 55.5 over-under. We have seen player props posted for that game. We will go over not only what happened in this game, which is generally pretty straightforward. Lack of production from the Vikings offense. Sam Darnold, again, on paper, 245, the one passing touchdown, the one interception, seems okay, but 9 sacks is absolutely disastrous. The lost fumble. It was super straightforward from the Rams side of things. They didn't have to do anything in the second half. They literally didn't. And, we saw that with Puka Nacua ending with 44 yards when he had 38 at halftime. Cooper Kupp just having the one catch in the second half there with 29 yards. Kyron Williams, he had that weird stretch where a little bit banged up there with his leg or whatever. And that's where we saw Ronnie Rivers involved. So that's important to note going into a matchup going up against the Eagles. We know that Blake Corum is still out with the fractured arm. We're coming up against a break right now. We will go over the rest of this game, what players did well, what props came through. We will then preview next week. Lines are already changing compared to where they were last night when I was talking about something specifically in the Texans and Chiefs game. We will get back to that coming up against the break right now. Stay tuned here on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today. Post-game show, my name is Tom Vecchio. We just saw Monday Night Football end. Rams coming away with the victory 27-9 over the Vikings. Wild card weekend is officially over. And right before the break, I just said that the Eagles at home, that line has been posted at 6.5 points in favor of the Rams. It has already moved to 5.5 points with a 44.5 over-under. In the 2 minutes or 3 minutes since it's been posted, money is already coming in on the Rams, and it is now 5.5 points. Speaking of lines moving, let's take a look at the Texans visiting the Chiefs. This is still a 7.5 point spread. Would I be shocked to see it move to 7 by the game kicks off? No. Everyone's going to be talking about the same thing. Again, the Chiefs, they don't cover. They win games, but they don't cover. Last night, almost 24 hours ago exactly, I was talking about Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, and I just was not expecting this to be a big game. And if I have to go find the clip, I will, of Joe Mixon under 62.5 rushing yards. In 24 hours, that number has dropped to 57.5. A 5-yard difference is huge. Now, this is setting up for some nice closing line value. It was 62.5. It is now 57.5. Now, this is not to say that the bet is won. Of course not. Anything can happen. Joe Mixon can break off 60 yards on a broken tackle, and he gets there in the first quarter. Of course, that can always happen. The point is, though, we want to be early on lines, and we want to be early on lines that are moving in the right direction. So getting in on 62, we will have a good gap of closing line value compared to where it may end up. And listen, you can go back up to 58, 59, et cetera, but it's good that we were there from the jump. So that game, again, is 7.5 in favor of the Chiefs. That's where it should be. Will it end up at 7? Probably. That would be my guess if I had to make a guess right now. And then I would say maybe the points gets up to 42. That is a nice number there. Now, when it comes to the Ravens-Bills game, this is another one that I spoke about heavily with the receiver market. Again, it is now 1.5 points. The line is flipped. It was 1.5 in favor of Buffalo. It is now 1.5 in favor of the Ravens. We were seeing the Ravens at minus 106 or so on the money line. It's now at minus 118. The Bills were sitting at minus 110, minus 112. They are now plus 100 on the money line. So money is coming in on the Ravens, and that has moved. When it comes to the passing props, we've seen Lamar Jackson's come down just a touch. It was in the low 230s yesterday. It's now sitting at 226. And the rushing market, obviously, is interesting. Derrick Henry is up just a touch. James Cook is down just a touch. But the receiving market is the one that I spent the most time on last night. And this is the one that I will continue to elaborate on throughout the week on various shows across SportsGrid until we have the Zay Flowers news. Because I made the point last night, and it remains true, that in a game with the 51.5 over-under, the highest player posted right now is Khalil Shakir at 47.5 yards, and I made the argument for him over 47.5 yards, the spot that I have him, and over potentially 60 yards if you want to take him on the alt line, if we're arguing seeing close to 50 points, which I guess it's good that money is moving towards the Ravens if people have confidence that the Ravens will be scoring points. Obviously, the Bills will need to catch up. When it comes to the Zay Flower news, or Zay Flowers news, Zay Flowers, the news on him, is that the market seems a little bit light with 47.5 being the highest for Khalil Shakir. This is also to note that Rashad Bateman is not posted because the news on Zay Flowers impacts Rashad Bateman props. Now, you could look to jump early on a Mark Andrews, obviously because Bateman is not posted. If Zay Flowers were to be ruled out, Mark Andrews at 37.5, that number could move to 38, 39, maybe 40, as we do see Mark Andrews as a consistent and often favorite target of Lamar Jackson. Now, there's also an argument to be made that if Flowers is out, the Ravens will just do what they did to an extent, obviously, last week against the Steelers. It was obviously a very different degree of opponent compared to playing the Bills, but this is okay. They don't have Zay Flowers, one of their main passing options. we will lean into the run game even more. We will lean into Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson even more. So seeing Derrick Henry, seeing his rushing attempts number, not necessarily his yards, but his attempts number, which is at 19.5 right now, seeing that move up to 20.5, that would not be a surprise if we do see Zay Flowers out. They want to just keep things on the ground, do what works best for them, and that would be Derrick Henry. We're coming up against the break right now. Stay tuned here for more preview of the divisional round on Pro Football Today post-game show.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on? Welcome to Pro Football Today post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Rams won. They move on. They are taking on the Eagles in the divisional round next weekend. We have, obviously, the schedule set. We have the lines have already been posted for that game. As I said, it opened up at 6.5, and within minutes, it moved to 5.5 in favor of the home Eagles. We are running through some of these other games as some of their numbers have begin to change since they were posted yesterday. I just jumped in on Derrick Henry over 19.5 rushing attempts. His number was, I think it was 91 or 92 last night for his yardage. It's now up to 94. His rushing prop is sitting at 19.5 attempts. I'm jumping in on the over. I'm expecting it to move to 20 as we've seen some of these lines move. Would not be surprised to see Lamar's number for rushing attempts, which is 8.5 right now. It is minus 138 to the over, so there's a good bit of juice. I would not be surprised to see that move to 9.5 when it's all said and done. So that's an early look on those games. Again, for Rams Eagles, it's 5.5 points, 44.5 over under. There are no props posted for that game as of now. The Kyren Williams kind of leg stretch, you got kind of crunched there when he almost fumbled. A little bit concerning for the Rams. So if Kyren Williams, isn't fully healthy, that's going to be interesting. What will the Rams offense look like at that point? Because Cooper Kupp hasn't been amazing to end the season. We also saw Puka Nacua get a little bit banged up. And Tyler Higbee left the game early with this chest injury and did not return. So what would the Rams offense look like if Kyren Williams plays, but he's not fully healthy? what's going on. The props that we see from that game will be very, very interesting. When it comes to the Super Bowl market, and when it comes to, you can start betting on direct Super Bowl matchups, as I said on the pregame show, I personally have a ticket on Lions versus the Chiefs for the Super Bowl. That is, it's not about either team winning. It's just that is the direct matchup. Obviously, this is where you can take, and I'm going to say gain a lot of value in the market just because there are so many different combinations that offer a ton of value. So right now, as we often see right after games close, they're not posted. I'm not seeing Super Bowl matchups posted on either FanDuel or DraftKings right now. We just have the normal Super Bowl odds up. But the matchups or the direct forecast saying like, oh, Lions will beat the Chiefs, none of those are posted right now. MVP markets I'm not seeing are posted right now across the board. We'll, of course, get into those as the weeks go on. But I will say there are times to take positions on players early. As I mentioned with Dave Sharapan on the pregame show when we were in between things, I have a small position on Derrick Henry, Super Bowl MVP at plus 3,100. It's 31-1. And I'm effectively betting on the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl odds, but I'm getting it at a much longer price. And the way I go about this is essentially choosing one player per postseason that I have faith in, and maybe adding a second if I like the odds. But the Ravens are plus 480 to win the Super Bowl right now. Now, obviously, if they get eliminated, the Super Bowl ticket you have is done, the MVP ticket I have is done, et cetera, et cetera. But if the Ravens were to advance to the AFC Championship or onto the Super Bowl, Derrick Henry will not be 31-1 to win Super Bowl MVP. It'll probably be, let's say they were playing the Lions, it'd probably be Lamar, Goff, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs as the top four options to win Super Bowl MVP. So I'm effectively betting on the Ravens to make it to the Super Bowl, and then I have insane closing line value at 31-1 for Derrick Henry when he'll probably be 4-1, 5-1, 6-1 to an MVP. So once the markets open back up and we have these final 8 teams set, if you have interest in even Lamar to win, a Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, you can make the argument. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, running backs don't often win it. I understand that. I would say going into, if you want to bet on Saquon, I think it's an easier example potentially than the Ravens. But let's say 75% of the time Jalen Hurts wins MVP, 20% of the time Saquon wins MVP, and then that remaining 5% is maybe an A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. They mentioned on the broadcast on Monday night tonight that Cooper Kupp won MVP when he was in the Super Bowl. Julian Edelman won it in 2019, I believe it was, against who was it? The Falcons. The 28-3 game, Julian Edelman won. So receivers do win it, but it's a very small portion of the time. So again, it would be Hurts winning it the majority of the time, overwhelming, then Saquon, then maybe A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith if the Eagles were to win it. So if you bet on Saquon at 19-1, which I believe I saw his number earlier today, they're plus 420. You're betting on Saquon essentially to get to the Super Bowl and the Eagles, and you will have a great ticket at that point. So these are just various things that we can have a little bit of fun with as we're coming to the close of the NFL season. Now, I would say be very metered and cautious when you do this. Don't be betting on Keon Coleman on the Bills to win Super Bowl MVP. Don't be betting on even a Rashad Bateman for the Ravens. I think is a bit too much. But Lamar or Derrick Henry, I could talk myself into, even betting on a Josh Allen to an MVP once that market is posted again for the Bills. That would be interesting. So that's just a different way to approach the Super Bowl odds, because at this point, betting on the Lions at plus 290 or the Chiefs at plus 340, we're not getting a whole lot of value there. Now, as I was also talking with Dave Sharapan on the pregame show about things, right now, Patrick Mahomes' Super Bowl MVP odds, as I saw pregame, they were sitting up at plus, I think it was plus 430 or plus 440. The Chiefs are currently plus 340 to win the Super Bowl. So again, it's not as big of a differential as I was talking about the Ravens at plus 480 and Derrick Henry's all the way up plus 3,100. But if you do bet on Patrick Mahomes to win Super Bowl MVP at plus 440, wherever it was, it's better than the number you're getting at plus 340. Again, they have to win 2 games in order just to get to the Super Bowl. But I made this argument last year to Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside leading up to the Super Bowl, where the Chiefs' money line, was they were underdogs going. Or this was how many years ago? 2 years ago, when they were playing the Eagles, where the Eagles were the favorite, and the Chiefs' money line was plus 120, and Patrick Mahomes was plus 250 to win the Super Bowl MVP. If in that game Mahomes wins the award, they win the game. So you just bet on him to win the MVP. So point being, there are various ways to approach different markets in the postseason because we are working with a very condensed timeline where things can change rapidly. We will see some of these teams get eliminated, and it's very possible that the Ravens lose this weekend, and then that ticket is dead. But if we see, I'm not going to say the Texans beat the Chiefs. That's a bit too much. But let's say you were to have a market on, I don't know, the Lions, and they get upset by the Commanders. The Eagles win this weekend, and then that Saquon or Hurts ticket that you have to win MVP is insanely valuable. So that's just something to look at. And of course, once the direct markets are posted, we will look at those. So we're coming up against the break soon. On the other side of the break, we will go through the Lions hosting the Commanders. It is minus 8.5 in favor of the Lions. Obviously, number one seed coming off the bye is a 55.5 over-under. Player props are posted for this game. They were posted earlier today, and right from the jump, the anytime touchdown market is hilarious. Jahmyr Gibbs is minus 420 to score a touchdown. David Montgomery is minus 330. This is obviously in speculation that David Montgomery will be back, but Jahmyr Gibbs is minus 420 to score a touchdown. That is insane price, that is higher than CMC was at times over the past few years. And then we have obviously Montgomery. Amon-Ra St. Brown is minus 150. Jameson Williams is minus 105. Sam Laporta is plus 135. Do not bet on any of those players. Sam Laporta would be the first player you would even consider betting on. Don't lay minus 150 for a touchdown prop. We're coming up against the break. We'll dive through all of the yardage props as I see them now because, again, we want to jump on the lines early, just as we saw with Joe Mixon. His number was 62.5 last night. It is already down to 57.5. We will go through all of this on the other side of this break. Stay tuned to Pro Football Today postgame show.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Rams come away with the win on Monday Night Football, 27-9. They move on to take on the Eagles. That line is already posted. Again, it is 5.5 in favor of the Eagles. It has already moved down from where it opened at 6.5, and it is a 41.5 over-under. Excuse me, 44.5 over-under for that game. 5.5 points in favor of the Eagles at home. It is 41.5 for Texans at the Chiefs. We are now going through the Commanders and the Lions. This game was posted last night when I was doing this exact post-game show after the Commanders came away with a doink field goal to win it. The line was posted last night, but the player props were not posted. Now we do see player props posted, and the market that immediately jumps out would be the rushing market for a few reasons. Number one, there's no props posted for Jahmyr Gibbs, not in the rushing nor in the receiving. This is obviously solely hinging on the David Montgomery news. There have been some reports and positive speculation that David Montgomery, who's been out for a couple of weeks, he will be back for the divisional round. Now, this is not confirmed. It is just speculation and reports at this point. Jahmyr Gibbs has been not only awesome throughout the entirety of the season, but he has been specifically great over these last few weeks when Montgomery has been out, an absolute beast in the backfield, 100-plus yards on the ground, the combined rushing plus receiving. I would assume if Montgomery doesn't play, that rushing plus receiving line is going to be sitting at 110, 109, somewhere around there. It is going to be very, very high. So the lack of rushing props from the Lions is the first note. The second note, Brian Robinson Jr., the lead running back for the Commanders, is sitting at 37.5 rushing yards. That is insanely low for a lead running back. Last night against the Bucs, I spoke about him on In-Game Live at 7:30. I spoke specifically about Brian Robinson going under 47.5 rushing yards. He ended the game with 16. And now his number, which was 47.5, is now down to 37.5. Obviously not the same game. I'm saying last night's game against the Bucs was at 47. For this upcoming week, it is at 37.5, showing that Brian Robinson does not have a level of consistency. So if no one in the backfield, essentially, for the Commanders is expected to run the ball. Now, Daniel's line is sitting at 52.5. Austin Eckler sitting at 21.5. But essentially, if no one in the backfield for the Commanders is expected to run the ball, and we see the Commanders as 8.5-point underdogs, and what do we know the Lions offense can do? The Lions offense can go out there and score points, I don't want to say with the best of them, because they are the best. They can go out and drop 30 points before you know it. So I think this game is setting up for Daniels to have to pass the ball at a high volume. So right now his passing yards is sitting at 234.5. I really like that line, but I'm going to be most interested in is his passing attempts, which is not posted yet. So it is 234.5 for Jaden Daniels over on his passing yards. That I have interest in right now. That's where I'm going to jump in now. But the market I'll have the most interest in will be his passing attempts. I think he'll have to get the ball out at a higher rate because they're not going to be able to move the ball on the ground, combined with the fact that they will not be able to run it. So that was just over on FanDuel. I'm checking now on DK. They do have attempts posted here. It is 34.5, minus 110 to the over, minus 120 to the under. That is interesting. Now, Goff is sitting at 33 on both sides, but it is minus 130 to the over. So, the question becomes is what would things look like, or what would have to happen for Daniels to hit the under on his passing attempts? And it would have to be a situation where the Lions break off these 10, 11, 12 play drives that are eating up so many yards and eating up so many plays and time on the clock that they take off 7 minutes and they're literally controlling the ball for half of a quarter, whatever it might be. And there are just not enough chances and time for Daniel to literally have the plays to run to get to 34.5, despite the fact that they will be in a full passing game script. He literally just won't have the chances to get there. So I'm going to wait on this number on 34.5. considering it is juiced to the under. If we do see it move to 33.5, I would then go over on 33.5. That's where I want to see it, is sitting at 34.5 currently on DK. If it gets posted at 33, that's where I will get to. So the attempts for Jaden Daniels will be the most interesting market. I think his yards are totally fine. Again, it is sitting at 234.5 on FanDuel. It is 233.5 over on DK. I expect the yards to be there for Jaden Daniels. We have seen the secondary for the Lions be very banged up, especially to close the season. I know they looked good to end the regular season versus Sam Darnold, but with a 51.5 over-under, we will be seeing some amount of yards. I'm not going to say a ton of points necessarily in this game or from the Commanders specifically, but I think the yards will be there. And, if I had to make a decision right now, it would be under 55.5. I think that would be the spot to go. I think that's just way too many points to be seeing in a divisional game. Seeing these teams combine and push towards 60 points is just far, far too much considering what we have seen. And especially if the Lions do get Montgomery back, and even if he's not 100%, they're going to be able to control the ball on the ground far better than the Commanders. And they're just going to bleed that time off the clock, and there, again, just won't be enough chances for the Commanders to put up points or either team to put up points. So I'm leaning on the under on this game. I'm leaning on potentially some overs on Jaden Daniels when it comes to passing yards and passing attempts, because I think they, A, will be playing from behind, and then B, they just will not be able to run it. Brian Robinson has not been good, and frankly, a 37.5 rushing prop for your lead running back is just insanely low. It's 37.5 over on FanDuel for Brian Robinson. It's 35.5 over on DK. So again, always shop for the best lines available for these players. We're coming up against a break right now. We have one more segment left. We can run through any odds and ends for these games, anything else that has been posted, any differential in these props across books. Always want to be taking advantage of that. So keep that in mind. Stay tuned on this side of the break. Again, Rams coming away with the victory, 27-9. That game hits the under. They will be on the road, taking on Philly next week. Stay tuned right here after the break.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on? And welcome back to Pro Football Today post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Rams come away with the win. They're going on the road next week to take on the Eagles. 5.5 point line in favor of the Eagles. That line has already moved. It is still 6 points over at DK. Of course, shop for the best lines available. In the time that I started the show and to right now, the Super Bowl MVP market is back and posted. That is absolutely important, and it's what I was talking about for that segment. So let's go over these because, again, there's an opportunity to find a little bit of value. And as I mentioned, I have Derrick Henry at plus 3,100 to win Super Bowl MVP. I'm doing this in the hopes that the Ravens win this week. They beat the Chiefs. Therefore, Derrick Henry, if the Ravens make the Super Bowl, he will not be plus 3,100 to win MVP. He'll be, 4-1. Right now, Derrick Henry is 18-1. To win Super Bowl MVP on the FanDuel Sportsbook. And the same thing can be said, again, about a number of these players. Right? Saquon is 15-1. Jahmyr Gibbs is 15-1. I think that's very interesting. And again, I am doing this looking at the differential when it comes to the team Super Bowl odds. The Lions are plus 290 to win the Super Bowl. If the Lions make the Super Bowl, it's going to be Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs as 1 and 2, at least from their team, to win Super Bowl MVP, whomever they may end up playing. So if you were interested in the Lions, but you're saying at 290, I don't want to be betting 290 on a team to win the Super Bowl. If you were on the Lions all year, that's a different story. But there's a realistic scenario that Jahmyr Gibbs wins Super Bowl MVP if the Lions were to make it there. And if they were to make it there, he's not going to be 15-1. So you can be doing and finding some of these, differential in terms of prices for these players. And as I mentioned, Mahomes was plus 430 or plus 440. It's slightly down to plus 420. It is better than their price, which is plus 340 to win the Super Bowl. So again, you are essentially betting on Mahomes and the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl future based on his Super Bowl MVP at plus 420. Obviously, there's, again, scenarios where the Chiefs win and it's not Mahomes. I find that very hard to believe personally. But you could do the same thing for many of these players. So I would say now is the time to do it before these games happen, just because once half the field is eliminated, obviously all these numbers are going to change dramatically. If we do see the Ravens end up winning, and it's a big Derrick Henry game, I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop under 10-1. When he's 18-1 right now, he dropped from 31 to 1 at the start of the playoffs. He's down to 18. If they were to beat the Bills, not only are you beating the Bills, but you're also removing Josh Allen ahead of you. If we do see some of these other teams eliminated, we're going to see these players simply removed off the board. And that's where we're going to see the value open up, and just having a ticket at 31 or 18 or 20-1, whatever it might be. Again, don't go too crazy with this. We're not going to be saying that Kyren Williams is going to be winning Super Bowl MVP, just because I don't expect the Rams to upset the Eagles and then have to upset the Lions and then get to this. That's too much. Now, can you have a little bit of fun with it and maybe say, do I want to have a Travis Kelce ticket at 100-1? Maybe. Again, we do see receivers win. It's a very small percentage of the time. It is predominantly quarterback. Then it's, maybe running back. You could also make the case that it's a defensive player. And that's certainly an interesting argument to be made, because we do see a lot of these players, the defensive players that is, very, very high odds, like a Chris Jones, impact plays, sacks, forced fumbles. We have seen defensive players win again, not a large portion of the time. Maybe a Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens, a very clear impact player for them, making big plays, sacks, interceptions, fumbles, 310-1. So if the Ravens were to win, were to advance to the Super Bowl, again, it is a small portion of the time that even any defensive player wins. But if it comes from the Ravens, it might be him. So as we close out this week, or as we lead up to the games closing out this week, now is the time to strike, just because I think the value will be gone from the core players that you really want to have exposure to, such as a Derrick Henry or a Saquon Barkley. Those would be my two favorites. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, absolutely tied with those two as well. So those are the players I would ultimately look to at Super Bowl MVP. As we get to other markets, as we move throughout the week, the direct matchups or direct outcome, that is super fun to get to. You can put a very small unit on those. If you want to say Chiefs over the Lions or Chiefs just to play the Lions, those are really fun markets to get to. And we can discuss all of that as the weeks go on as we lead up to the Super Bowl. We're coming to the end here. Again, Rams come away with the win, 27-9 over the Vikings. The Eagles will host the Rams next Sunday. 5.5-point favorites. The Eagles, that is a 44.5 over-under. We are done for Wild Card Weekend. Stay tuned for all your football news right here on SportsGrid.